Welcome to the Progress Zone podcast, where we help you create real momentum in your mindset, business, health, and life. I'm your host, Jody Donaldson, and every week we'll explore the small, intentional steps that lead to big, lasting growth. This isn't about hype, it's about habits. So let's get started. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Progress Zone. Today, I want to talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Not because it's loud, not because it's dramatic, but because it's quiet. Most lives don't stall because of failure. They stall because of indecision. Not the obvious kind, not the kind where everything is falling apart, but the kind that hides in waiting, in overthinking, in preparing, and in telling yourself you'll decide when you're more ready. And the hard truth is this: every day you don't choose, something else chooses for you. Time chooses. The circumstances choose, other people choose, and slowly, almost invisibly, your life drifts somewhere you never intentionally aimed for. So that's what we're talking about today. Not reckless decisions, not impulsive moves, but learning how to stop letting hesitation quietly shape your future. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking longer. It comes from deciding. And if you've been feeling stuck or restless or frustrated, or like something needs to change, but you can't quite name what, this episode is for you. So let's go ahead and get into it. There's a perception out there that indecision feels responsible. It feels thoughtful. It feels mature. We tell ourselves we're being careful, that we're gathering information, and that we're waiting for the right time. But here's what rarely gets said. Indecision has a cost. It costs momentum, it costs confidence, and it costs energy. And eventually, it costs opportunities. There's a reason indecision feels exhausting, even though you're not doing anything. Because your brain is burning energy holding unresolved loops that are open. Every unfinished decision stays active in the background of your mind. And that weight adds up. And over time, indecision doesn't just keep you from moving forward, it reshapes how you see yourself. You start to doubt your instincts. You second guess your judgment. You hesitate even on the small things. Not because you're incapable, but because you haven't been practicing deciding. Let's get clear on something important. Indecision is not the same thing as thoughtfulness. Indecision is not wisdom, and indecision is not neutrality. Indecision is still a decision, just one made by default. When you don't choose, you are choosing comfort over progress. You're choosing the familiar over the unknown, and the temporary relief over the long-term growth. And your brain loves that because your brain is wired to avoid uncertainty. Human beings are far more motivated to avoid loss than to pursue gain. So instead of risking regret, people stay stuck. They stay in jobs they've outgrown, or in routines that just drain them, in relationships that just no longer align, and in habits that no longer serve who they're becoming. Not because they don't want more, but because choosing feels heavier than waiting. But here's the paradox. Waiting doesn't make that decision any easier. It only makes it heavier. I call this the decision drift. It's what happens when life keeps moving while you stay undecided. The days pass, the weeks pass, the year passes, and suddenly you're not choosing your direction. You're reacting to where you've landed. And reaction is always more expensive than intention. There's another layer here that matters. Your brain is not designed to hold unlimited open choices. The more decisions you delay, the weaker your ability to decide becomes later. Not because you lack the discipline, but because your mental bandwidth is just overloaded. That's why indecision often shows up as procrastination or irritability or even mental exhaustion. You're not lazy, you're just overloaded. And here's the part that most people miss. Indecision drains confidence faster than making the wrong choice. When you decide and adjust, you learn. When you hesitate, you doubt yourself. And that doubt compounds. I call this the decision debt. It's the emotional and mental weight of choices you keep postponing. Just like financial debt, decision debt accrues interest. The longer you avoid it, the heavier it feels to address. And eventually, people stop saying, I'm just undecided, They start saying, I really don't trust myself. And that's the real cost. So let's reframe this. You don't need perfect decisions. You need clear ones. Most people confuse clarity with certainty. They think they need guarantees before they can move. But certainty is rare. Clarity is really all you need, and it's usually enough. Here's a rule that may change how you move forward. Remember, clear beats perfect every time. A clear decision with imperfect information will take you further than a perfect decision you never make. Progress follows that direction, not certainty. And here's something that may be even more freeing. Most decisions are not permanent. They're adjustable. You can course correct, you can refine, and you can even pivot. But you can't grow from just standing still. So let's slow this down a minute and talk about how indecision actually shows up in real life, because this is where it quietly does the most damage. Let's take the person who knows they've emotionally checked out of their job. They feel it every Sunday night when the Sunday blues show up. They feel it every morning when that alarm sounds. But instead of choosing, whether it's choosing to leave or renegotiate or pivot, they just wait. And months turn into years. And eventually, that job doesn't just drain their energy, it reshapes their identity. They stop seeing themselves as capable, as ambitious, as someone who takes initiative. Not because they aren't ambitious, but because they never chose movement. Then there's the person who knows they need to address their health, not in some extreme way, not in a total overhaul, just one honest step, a conversation, a commitment, a routine they can sustain. But they keep saying, I'll start when things calm down. Well, guess what, folks? Life never really calms down. So the longer they wait, the harder it feels to begin, not just physically, but mentally as well. The decision itself becomes heavier than the action ever would have been. And then there's the quiet one, the boundary that needs to be set, the conversation that needs to happen, and the version of yourself you know you've outgrown. You don't avoid it because you don't care. You avoid it because you care deeply. And choosing feels like it might disappoint someone or disrupt something or change how you're seen. So you wait. And waiting feels easier in the moment, but ultimately it becomes heavier over time. Because while you're waiting, life is still deciding for you. So let's come back to this. You don't need perfect decisions. You need clear ones. Clarity gives you the direction, and direction creates movement. And movement restores the momentum, and that momentum changes everything. So how do you actually start deciding without overthinking? This is where we can get practical. First, you need a time boundary. Make a 24-hour decision rule. If a decision has been circling your mind for days or weeks, and you already have all the basic information, give yourself 24 hours to choose. Not to research more, not to poll 5 more people, just to decide. Why does this work? Because action interrupts that rumination. And once movement starts, clarity starts to increase. Second, use what I call the future you filter. I love this. Ask yourself this question. 6 months from now, will future me be grateful I moved or frustrated I waited? This question, it cuts through the emotion and brings a lot of perspective. It doesn't demand perfection. It demands honesty. And third, this is so critical. So try to understand this piece. Confidence follows decisions. It does not precede them. Most people think confident people decide easily. It's actually the opposite. Decisive people become confident because they practice choosing. Decisiveness is not a personality trait, it's a skill. And like any skill, we know it strengthens with repetition. The first decision feels uncomfortable, the second feels easier, and the third feels empowering. And that momentum builds not just in action, but in self-trust. Now I want to make this personal for you. There is probably at least one decision you've been avoiding. You already know what it is. It's the one that comes up when things get quiet. The one you keep pushing to later. That decision isn't going away. It's waiting for you. And the longer you wait, the more energy it takes to face it. So here's your challenge. And this is where progress actually happens. Identify one delayed decision, not all of them, just one. Give yourself a time boundary, that 24 hours. Use the future you filter. Choose clear over perfect. Then commit to movement. Not because it's guaranteed and not because it's easy, but because choosing is how momentum returns. You don't need to decide everything. You need to decide something. Because once you do, something powerful happens. Your energy comes back, your focus sharpens, and your confidence begins to rebuild. Not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you stop living in limbo. And that's what decisiveness really is. It's not about always choosing right. It's about choosing forward. I hope today's message has been helpful. And if this episode resonated with you, if it put words to something you've been feeling, but maybe just haven't been able to articulate, I want you to do one simple thing. Share it with someone who's been stuck in indecision, someone who's waiting or overthinking or just sitting at a crossroads right now. Or take a moment, leave a review or drop a comment or send me a message. Those small actions matter more than you realize. And they help this message reach the people who need it most, the ones who are quietly drifting and don't even realize it yet. And if you want to go deeper into this work, my book, The Progress Zone, Unlocking Your Full Potential, expands on these ideas and gives you practical tools to keep building momentum long after this episode ends. And to everyone listening, just keep leaning into your growth, stay intentional with your progress, and remember that big change comes from small, consistent steps. So keep showing up, keep doing the work, and keep making forward progress, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining me in the Progress Zone. If today's episode gave you a spark, share it with a friend, subscribe, or leave a quick review. And remember, progress isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. I'm Jody Donaldson, and I'll catch you next time inside the Progress Zone.